The on-again, off-again peace efforts have got a leg up, or so it seems. What was meant to be a talk between heads of states to end a war soon has turned into a downgraded discussion between Russia's deputy ministers and some of Ukraine's ministers, with Marco Rubio probably the senior most in the room, who's hoping to end a war that most stakeholders at this stage don't seem that interested in ending. Even for Trump, it seems there's growing frustration due to entrenched interests on both sides, whether it's the Russian side or the Ukrainian side, where the effort is to actually stall. What really is happening right now in Istanbul, where the two sides are meeting for the very first time in 3 years, we're going to decode that. But before that, let's play out these important sound bites of the two warring sides. And then we come back and decode, is something really likely to happen in Istanbul?
Міністерство закордонних справ, мій офіс, військові, наші розвідки, представники всіх розвідок, до речі. І для того, щоб приймати будь-які рішення, які можуть привести до очікуваного справедливого миру. Що стосується високого рівня зустрічі, ми почнемо з зустрічі з президентом Ердоганом, з усією широкою делегацією Туреччини. Ми в контакті з американською стороною, а вони, думаю, також будуть в Туреччині на високому рівні. Подивимось, але...
Сначала Зеленский какие-то там делал заявления, что он требует, чтобы Путин прибыл лично. Ну, жалкий человек, но всем же понятно, кроме, наверное, его самого и тех, кто им кукловодит. Потом ему старшие товарищи объяснили, что не надо так глупо себя вести, и нужны переговоры. Кстати сказать, Запад за 3-4 дня последний как-то отодвинул.
The big questions on this story. Let's reflect that. First up, is the meeting in Istanbul actually going to lead for some sort of a breakthrough in these two talks? Trump and Putin are absent. Zelensky is there, you heard him. Does that mean that this meeting is actually going to have no big impact? Next, will Donald Trump threaten Russia with fresh sanctions? Remember, his credibility is on the line. He said 24 hours. He's frustrated. No movement happening there. Is he now going to resort to the one thing that he has in his leverage, which is the sanctions? And let's ask that to Professor Anuradha Chenoy, former Dean and Chairperson of the Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies at JNU. And we have Vadym Halaichuk, who is the Member of Parliament in Ukraine, representing Zelensky's party. And let me start with you, sir. You are one of the affected parties. And in fact, it's only the Ukrainian president who's actually there, not Donald Trump and not President Putin either. I want to understand from you, at this stage, it looks like the outcome from this meeting may be fairly limited.
Greetings. We certainly didn't expect much ever since we've learned that there was no answer to President Zelensky's proposal to meet in person with Putin. The tactics are obviously drag on. The main demand, which we have for Russia, is the ceasefire, because that's the logic of the whole process. If you have activity, if you have fighting on the level that we do now, any serious peace negotiations are simply impossible. Therefore, we made it very clear about about what we see the roadmap for efficient negotiations. Therefore, we now use every opportunity to show that Ukraine is serious about negotiations. We will do everything that can bring us closer to any meaningful discussions, meaningful negotiations. However, we do see no desire, we see no serious intention from the Russian side to actually enter meaningful negotiations. And this is just another occasion to demonstrate it. But we have a lot to discuss with our partners. We have a lot to discuss with the Americans. We have a lot to discuss with Turkey, who have been very active in bringing closer the parties to this discussion. So we have a lot of work to do.
So let's see whether
Russians
or not
obviously don't.
Yeah, let's see whether or not this actually leads to something significant. I'm going to wait for that announcement to come in, if at all it does. Do not forget that President Zelensky is the only one out of the three leaders who've actually there. There's also, because there's these on the sidelines, he would probably like to meet some of those NATO leaders to once again make a case. But Professor Anuradha, I want to ask you this, that this comes in after that 30-day ceasefire prerequisite that has been put in by Ukraine and backed by the European allies of President Zelensky. And that also almost is like a deal breaker at this stage for Russia, isn't it? How do you see this meeting in terms of any gains whatsoever? Or do you think that this is actually stalling tactics from both sides?
Well, look, I don't think there's going to be any outcome from this meeting because Ukraine doesn't really want to compromise. Their position is they want a return of all 4 provinces and Crimea. They want to become part of NATO, and they're backed by the European Union, whereas Russia wants to keep the territory it has taken. They've had a constitutional change which makes them part of the Russian Federation. They will not allow Ukraine to become part of NATO, and they want a peace architecture of Europe. So neither side sees eye to eye. In between, there's Trump, and Trump has just said today that unless he meets Putin, there's not going to be any likely outcome. Now, Russia does not even want to have a 30-day ceasefire because for them, because they seem to have the upper hand in the war, they don't want to slow down. And they feel that will give Ukraine time to rebuild its forces and get in more weapons, which in any case, they are getting weapons and time to recruit, etc. So there is a stalemate already. And I don't see this meeting in Turkey really moving forward. It's good that Rubio is there. He would speak to both sides, would carry the messages back. And maybe Rubio, Witkoff, and others would understand both positions again, though they have been understanding and, what both sides want and how to get to a middle ground. So no negotiation anywhere in the world can be successful without compromise from both sides. But the positions right now are very hard from both sides. And they see it in very parallel ways. Someone has to find a way out, like maybe removing medium-range missiles from Europe, which threaten Russia, and Russia withdrawing, seeing which part of the territory they can have a line of final control.
Mr. Vadym, respond to that, what Professor Anuradha is saying, that you've got to make some concessions, otherwise you don't have any deal on the table.
We don't believe that we have to make concessions, and we do believe that Russians have again demonstrated any lack of making any concessions on their own. They have produced the ultimatum, and they insist that the ultimatum is the way to go forward. So again, we don't expect much from these negotiations. However, since we did meet before, and we did have some successes, and I mean with some of the members of this delegation, and we did have some success in, for example, prisoners exchange and some other humanitarian issues.
Yes.
Then I guess that would be the point of discussion. But otherwise, looking at the list of the delegates from Russia, there's definitely no hope for any serious breakthrough in peace negotiation.
Indeed. Professor Anuradha, I really have very little time. 30 seconds, please. The downgraded list that came in from Russia was a signal enough, wasn't it?
Correct, because you see, Ukraine has in its constitution, they forbid talks with Russia. So Putin and Lavrov have said that they'll have to change their constitution, because even if there's some agreement, a new government can say it's not valid because it's their constitution doesn't have it. Moreover, Ukraine's term as president has ended and he's on emergency pass. So they also question his legitimacy.
Yes.
So both sides, have very strong points against the other.
Indeed, they do. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you. We haven't heard the last of it, but thank you so much for joining me on India Global. And bottom line, viewers, really is that it's unclear if any peace deal is actually on the table or on the anvil. But it's clear the conditions for peace are insufficient. On the military side, Russians want a greater edge, to speak with a position of strength, and is now making efforts only to stall and not to end the war. Ukraine wants to extract the best possible deal. NATO membership, security guarantees, continue to get a steady stream of foreign arms, all deal breakers for Russia. Well, it's unclear whether American and Turk mediators will play any significant or substantial role, or will there be just another meeting leading into another meeting as the war machinery continues.